of digging deep and going beyond the issues. We're going to deal with some of everything that you and I encounter on a day-to-day basis. And of course, you can see to my left and your right, take your souls to the polls. I voted, have you? This is the most critical election of our times, and you know that. Our very lives are on the line, not only for the presidency of the United States, but the Senate race is on the ballot. Board of Education is on the ballot. Supreme Court jurists and justices on the ballot. Circuit Court judges is on the ballot. How are we going to deal with issues in our community? Demolition is on the ballot. How we're going to deal with the fact of bond proposals for parks and other situations, that's on the ballot. Your very life is on the ballot. So all those people who are talking about my vote does not matter, if your vote did not matter, they would not be trying to suppress it. They would not be trying to kill it. There would not be lines in Georgia and Alabama and Louisiana and other places where people are standing in line for 8 and 9 and 10 and 11, 12 hours just to vote. That's the new poll tax. That's the new way they do voter suppression. That's why in Michigan, they did not want to extend the time for us to count voting ballots that have been brought in. You know, we've had more ballots to be turned in this absentee excursion we've had in the history of the ballots in Michigan being turned in. That's why we have early voting. That's why we have same-day voting. We passed those measures a year or two ago, and now they've come into fruition. So your vote does matter. And anybody that's in your house eating, they got to be voting. If they ain't voting, they should not be eating, because we cannot continue to eat and consume what we've been eating and consuming. So tonight, we're going to talk to 3 women who are involved in education, who want to lead us for another term, who have some vision, some understanding, and then we want to question them about the direction that they're taking our Detroit public school system in and what that means. As we begin, I just want to go to this little slide over here. 4 cornerstones. They are faith, family, finance, and fellowship. We as a church, Fellowship Chapel, believe in these areas: faith, family, finance, and fellowship. You have to have faith in order to do anything that you do. Because if you don't have faith, you cannot assume and acquire that which you are striving to achieve and to acquire. Without faith, you all know it is impossible to please the will of God. Faith without works is dead. That's why we have to have faith that we can win in November, but we got to work like we want to win in November. That's where our vote comes in. And then, of course, family. We cannot do anything without the security of the family, without the sanctioning and the strength of the family. There's an old African proverb that says, the ruin of a nation begins in the homes of its people. Likewise, the strength of a nation resides in the home of its people. You need all of that. And then, of course, behind Sister Sonia Mays is, of course, finance. And interestingly enough, she's sitting in front of finance because that's her bag of works is finance. She's into finance. And you got to have finance. There's an old saying that you can't have a romance without finance. And so you got to have both of those things. The finance of our business, of our community, this church in which we're broadcasting live, costs money. We had to finance it. The people of Fellowship Chapel poured their hard-earned money, pledging and committing and covenanting to build this institution. There used to be houses burned down and bombed out, drug houses all around here. My pulpit sits right here. A drug house used to sit here. A drug house, a dope house, and now it's a hope house. But it took finances to do that. So you can't do anything without that. And certainly, you got to have fellowship. That means bringing the community of like-minded people together. And so when you bring all those folk together, you can have a turning point. You can turn the direction of your life. So that's what we're doing tonight. Welcome to the Turning Point. And if you want to call in or ask a question, you can pose a question on the Freedom Institute webpage. Just type your question in, and we'll get it, and we can ask our special guests. Good evening, ladies. Let me welcome, first of all, Ms. Misha Stallworth and Ms. Iris Taylor, who is the president of the Detroit Public School Community District, and Ms. Sonia Mays. Welcome, ladies. 3 ladies. Are there any men on the school board? Is it all women?
There are no men on the
No
school
men? I mean, what's up with that? Does that create a situation because we don't have men? Do we miss that kind of input? Anybody?
I would say no.
Of course you would say no, Iris. So we don't miss that. So there's not, that perspective is not there.
So we seek whatever resources that we don't currently have within the board. We seek that in the community as we look at the partnership, because we do really believe that it takes a village to make this work go.
Yes.
And so, no, we don't miss it because whatever we don't have, we go out and seek it.
Misha, you are perhaps one of the youngest board members I think that we've ever had. What kind of perspective are you bringing, and what's your take on where the school system is?
Well, so my youth is one thing, which obviously puts me in closer proximity to our students than some other folks.
Is that an advantage or disadvantage?
I think in some ways it works well. I am a digital native, just like so many of our students. Despite the digital divide, I grew up in the same kinds of environments with the internet being
What school did you go to?
a guiding force. So I went to 2 high schools. I went to Southfield Lathrop and I went to Bloomfield Lasser.
Okay. So now you're here in Detroit. See, I went to Central. Notice people are...
I couldn't
I
tell.
did wear my Central High School hoodie, and I just want you to know, for those of you who want to get one of these, you can contact a brother by the name of Diego Transplant. See how beautiful it is? Central High School, blue and white. We're trailblazers. We didn't go to Cass, Renaissance, Osborne, Northwestern, McKenzie, any of those. Those are fine schools, but they ain't Central. And you have to be a trailblazer in order to be a technician. Miss Sonia Mays, what high school did you go to?
I'm a proud graduate of Renaissance High
Oh,
School,
Lord,
right
have
down
mercy.
the street.
Okay, all right. Talk to me about the Detroit Public Schools finance. I mean, are y'all paying teachers what they should be paid?
I don't think anybody in this country pays teachers what they should be paid. And that is my very transparent, honest answer. In the last 4 years, we've done a lot of work to make every single dollar that we have count in the district, and we've prioritized paying teachers as much as possible. And so we now pay starting teachers more money than they'll make anywhere else in the state. We've increased average salaries by over $10,000 for all of our teachers.
That's recent, though.
It's progressive. So
Okay.
we've been making those
So
investments
are we
over the...
competitive with other school districts to the degree that we're not losing teachers because the pay is not there?
We've added over 200 new teachers in the last 3 years. So we are far more competitive than when we all came on this board 4 years ago.
Iris Taylor, what school did you go to?
I went to Central High School.
Say that again.
I went to Central High School.
Central High School. Well, you know you get my vote already. I mean, I'm just saying Central High School. Now, you are the president of the DPSCD, and we have a superintendent, Dr. Nikolai Vitti. I had to tell you, when Dr. Vitti was first being considered, I didn't support him. He knows it, I know it, I've said it publicly and privately, but since then, I've come to see some things that he's doing which are needed. And I know there's issues with that. But as a board, now you oversee his work. That's what a board is supposed to do. You are the policy-making board. And so talk to me about how those two things are connecting or disconnecting.
They're connected in the sense that when we were looking for a superintendent, we were looking for an individual who had experience in reform work, who had a proven track record. In fact, he took a school that was underperforming, a district that performed ultimately better than any other district in the United States. So that's what we were looking for. We were looking for a visionary. We were also looking for someone who had a heart for kids. So that's how we came to select Dr. Vitti. Our relationship is a partnership. He's our only employee. He understands he's accountable to us for his work. But we jointly created the strategic plan 2020. We jointly set priorities. We use that strategic plan to make decisions around allocation of resources and decisions of which programmatic thrusts we're going to manage one way or the other. We do not always agree in the process, but through the process of respect of each other, we work through our differences to either agree to disagree or to come to some sort of consensus around, well, this would be the best movement to make. And that's what the relationship is about.
Would that be your take also, Misha, relative to this relationship?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, my personal perspective is that if I can't trust my staff to do their jobs, then they shouldn't be on my staff. And so, you know, the skills that Dr. Vitti brings forward and the ways that we're able to work together really does represent the direction we've gone in, the improvements that we've made. And sometimes it's not perfect. Sometimes he's not happy. Sometimes I'm not fully happy. But we found a way forward where we get some of what we want.
Can any one of you give me a situation where y'all disagreed on something?
Charter schools. Should we continue to charter schools?
What's your disagreement there? What was it there or is it there?
Well, DPSCD has a portfolio of charter schools. Do we invest in seeing to it that they provide the same standard for which we're
Do they?
working to move it to that direction? But whether that we
Are
should
they
make that
better
investment?
than the DPSCD?
No, they aren't better than DPSCD.
Does my child receive a better education at a charter school than he or she would at a DPSCD school?
That depends on the school.
Okay. Okay. Because a lot of people just assume that because it's a charter school, it's a good school.
No. All of them have to have a strong curriculum that's compatible to the national standards. All of them have to move towards defining that excellence standard that we want to compare each other to, and all of them do not do that.
Sonia Mays, as I think about the Detroit Public Schools District, and it's still hard for me to say all of that, I'm so accustomed to saying Detroit Public Schools. Now we got the community school district. I mean, is the money there? If we don't turn the educational system around, it's going to be very difficult to turn the community around and get people really invested in the city. I mean, you got black people who don't want to take their kid to the DPSCD because of historic stereotypes that they have. Talk to me about why my child should go to a DPSCD school as a board member, as somebody who's leading the district.
I'm actually going to take this on a very personal note. I'm a graduate of this district. I grew up not too far from here, and I went to a predominantly white college. I've written about this over the course of my life, but the level of confidence that I had in myself and my skills as a black person coming out of this district has just bar none served me well. And I noticed when I got to college, I just sort of noticed a difference as a black person in how I saw myself relative to the world. I didn't understand that I was a minority coming from Detroit. And so I have walked, like coming out of DPS, I have walked my entire life with this really held high confidence that I can achieve whatever I want to tackle. And that is a byproduct of the leaders and the teachers who I interacted with through my high school career here in Detroit, who saw and believed in me and instilled that confidence. And so
I can't get that at the charter school?
I haven't been in a charter school. And so you know, possibly. But again, personalizing it, my experience found that was an intangible coming out of this district that just has really served me well as I move through a majority world.
Misha, why should I support you for re-election for the Detroit Public School Community District? I mean, you got a bunch of people who are running, and I understand that you three are running as a team, or as a trio, or as a choir, as a chorus. Why should I support you?
So over the last 4 years, I've been a really openly progressive voice on the board, which is not to say that others are not progressive. It's just to say that that's my bag. That's where I stand. That's where I come in and add value, quite frankly. So if it's looking at reforming codes of conduct, if it's looking at being a sanctuary district, as we move forward into the next 4 years and we talk about being an anti-racist school district, those are all the things that I'm bringing to the table. That's the work that I do as a social worker, as a community organizer, as a civic educator. That's the value that I add. And the other thing is that I know our city has a lot of skepticism around slates, rightfully so, but the three of us all have our own reputations and our own work that we're very proud of. And I don't think any of us take it lightly to tie that work to somebody else. So I would not attach my reputation and my work to these two women if I did not respect them and respect the work that they bring to the district. Slate or not, convenience or not, I would do it on my own if I didn't respect them.
Is that why y'all running together?
It is.
Sonia? Same question.
So you should vote for me because I am a natural, solution-oriented problem solver. Nothing gets me more excited than fixing things. And
I know you was a fixer. I'm gonna connect you. You know where I'm going.
we should talk
You was
about
in here fixing with, what's my man's name? Kevin Orr. Y'all came in and fixed the city. And I remember having Kevin Orr, when Kevin Orr first came to Detroit as the emergency manager, Lord have mercy. He came over here, we met in my office, and nice guy, very nice guy, kind of guy you'd like to have some Kool-Aid with after work, mama's family guy. We talked about all that, but then I said to him, man, oh, that's nice, but you got a lousy, I can't say it in church, job. And he busted, and I used some colloquialisms that we use in the community. And I said, the bottom line is, are we going to be better when you leave here? Because if you don't do it for the community, downtown going to be all right, but if you don't fix the community, then we still come up short. And so the jury is mixed on that. But you work for that guy or work with him. So for some people, it's like, wow, how can y'all support her? She was with Kevin Orr. What you got to say about that?
I'm a big believer that in order to make real community and societal change, you need to have leadership on the inside and on the outside. And my organizer friends who are situated in the grassroots community, we need to have that sort of agitation, that voice, that progressive mentality. But you also have to have people who can sit at the table of power, who actually can who can move the levers of policy and government from the inside. And I actually moved back home to take that job. It was really, really important to me as a Detroiter who grew up here, whose family is still in this neighborhood 45 years later. It was really important to me that work that was done during the bankruptcy was done in a way that wouldn't completely destroy the futures of the people who had
How
to
do
live
you
with
feel
it.
about what happened as the results of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes without saying. Like, I wish it wasn't, right? Like,
Yeah.
I very transparently wish that that moment hadn't happened. I mean, it was agonizing. It was agonizing on a community level. It was agonizing on a personal level. There are people in my family whose pensions were impaired, and so there was, the human toll of that was not for a second lost on me. But I do maintain that it was fundamentally better that there was somebody at that table who cared about what this looked like when it was done, and also had the skills and credibility to move an agenda forward from the inside.
So if we got to go down, it's better to have somebody to lay us down than to push us down.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's sort of one way to look at it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think as I've kind of moved away from that time in my life, I can see that people can see it and see my role in a bunch of different ways, but it was never my intent to do anything more than use that as a role to try to push parts of our community forward that really matter to legacy Detroiters. And I think what's really telling are the things that I have left that to do. I stayed here. I'm a social entrepreneur. I started a nonprofit that does investment in neighborhoods. I've actually invested over $65 million in Detroit's neighborhoods.
Where are you getting that money from? $65 million?
I told you, I'm a problem solver.
I see. So you got connections.
Well, it's
And where are some of the areas you're developing and building?
Yeah, so I'm using government programs and funding that's already out there, but I'm pushing it into neighborhoods like the North End.
When you say North End, where you talking?
So Graham Boulevard and Woodward area there. My nonprofit, we've invested in senior affordable housing, and so there's stuff that is kind of around that Midtown area that we've.
So you're trying to give back to the community?
It's what I think it's what I was always supposed to do. I mean,
Okay.
I went off and got a lot of skills. I had a very privileged career. Like
Right.
I had I worked on Wall Street, and this is what I think I
So
was.
Kevin
always
Orr's
doing.
gone, but you still here.
I'm still here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Iris, I know that you're affiliated with DMC, and you're president of the Detroit Board of Education. Why should we re-elect you?
Because I'm a results-oriented individual. I
Other
have,
other than the reason because you went to Central. But
yeah, I went to Central. It gave me the beginning of those skills. I have the ability to bring folks to consensus. I have the ability, because I'm a visionary, to be able to identify a process and to be able to move that process to achieve a particular objective, which is why I am very vested in creating strategic plans and agreements so it guides the decision-making in the direction. And as evidence in the progress that we've made from day one, 2 weeks being in office and they telling us they're going to close a number of schools, of being able to, and you know how devastating that can be to a community to close a school. We were able to resolve that in a matter of weeks so that we could move on then to do another assessment of what needed to happen. They gave us a budget that they said was balanced when we walked in day one, and yes, it was. But it was budgeted on a series of one-time events that was against a whole series of recurring expenses, which meant the next year it was programmed to fail. And we immediately intercede in rebuilding a budget to prevent that. We've had the last 4 years of a balanced budget and now have a reserve for a rainy day fund. So it is my leadership, the same way in the DMC. I took an organization that was losing $30 million, and when I left it, it had a positive EBITDA of excess of $40 million.
So you brought the money and you brought opportunities and all that in.
Exactly.
And the credibility.
I see. Let me ask you this, because I'm hearing a lot of things that the word on the street from some people is that people are supporting you all, that from behind the scenes there's dark money that's behind you all. I mean, there are some people who are pushing you that we don't see, to the degree that these are people supposedly that have interests that are beyond the education of our children. They have their own economic or political interests. Is that true? Is there some dark money? If so, let's bring it to the light. What's up with that? I know you've heard that because I've heard it. I mean, is there any substance then? What's being intimated by it?
I believe that the community at large has decided that this board, collectively, not just the three of us, have invested in making DPS-CD better. And as a result, foundations that didn't invest in DPS are now investing in it. The Balmer Foundation, for example, that supported technology, $8 million worth of technology. The business community, as you worked with, who put 53,000 tablets in the hands of students of DPS-CD. That work is because they saw integrity, fidelity, and a visionary board that was moving the district. And that's the same community, whether it's my medical staff community who are supporting me, or whether it is the grassroots community-based faith organizations who are supporting me, or other businesses who are supporting me.
Misha, I want you to come with that, respond to that same question. But before we do that, I want to just take a little pause for the cause. You know, this is a general election coming up. We have an election in about 13 days. We have an election that is key. Everybody needs to get in this game. Everybody got to play a role in this. You cannot sit this one out because our lives on the line, and here to talk about that, we have a little infomercial from the president of the Wayne State University Black Student Association. Can we run that?
To vote or not to vote, we cannot debate. Submit your ballots, we cannot delay. Your health and your safety ought not be erased, but without your vote, you have no say. Your vote is your voice, your ballot, your choice. Submit in the mail or go to the clerk or vote in the booth. Just make sure you're heard. Don't listen to lies. Our people have died to get you the right we must exercise. First, equip yourself with the knowledge you need. Research the ballot, share with family, judicial, legislative, and executive. 3 different branches of the government, but all on the ballot, so check with it. Policies, rules, disaffecting our schools. Your vote is a tool for injustice to move. The best way for us to win the game is to get in the game. We see things in this system that we need to change. Racist police killing us in our streets, disrespecting our lives, killing us in our sleep. Ayanna Jones, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Priscilla Slater. Black lives need justice. We must demand greater. Are you mad? You should be. Frustrated? You should be. Fed up? You should be. So take your souls to the polls and vote on November 3.
Thank you, Brother Jeremiah Wheeler. That's a message that we all need to have, to take your souls to the polls and vote. And certainly if you want to work in the community, if you want to work at the polls, if you want to drive a sound car, if you want to do robocalling, if you want to pass out literature, you can call 313-871-2087, 871-2087. And you see these signs, I voted, have you? Show these signs that's right here in the front. I voted, have you? These posters that are adorning the stage area. You can get this poster and you can put it at your home and in your yard. I voted, have you? These are yard signs that we want people to know that once you have gone and you've done your absentee voting, or you are able to go to the poll on election day, you can come and get this. If you've already voted, you can come by Fellowship Chapel. You can call 347-2820, 347-2820, or you can come by, pick up your yard sign, and you can sign up and help work in the polls. We need everybody to get in this game, as Jeremiah Wheeler from the Wayne State University Black Student Association talked about. We need you. Don't wake up on November the 4th and singing that song, if I woulda, coulda, shoulda, and that's too late then. It's too late. Now we have time. And if your vote did not matter, they would not be trying to suppress it as hard as they are doing all over the country. And so we can win this. Black people, black folk can make a difference in this election. That's why they're courting us. And don't get caught up in the Ice Cube-ism. Don't get caught up in the 50 Cent-ism who ain't worth a quarter when it comes to talking about voting. Get caught up in Fannie Lou Hamer-ism. Get caught up in John Lewis-ism. Get caught up in Martin Luther King-ism, to the degree those are individuals who put their lives on the line for us to have the right to vote. We have a shot in 2020 to change the course of this nation. I don't care what you personally think of Mr. Biden or Senator Harris. Look at the other side. There is no question that we will be in a much better situation if we change the course of the nation. And so we have the responsibility and the opportunity to do this. You got to take your souls to the polls and vote like your life depends upon it, because quite frankly, it does. So, Ms. Misha, as relates to voting, and I know you voting because you want people to vote for you, but, we want to make sure that we are voting for you and not for somebody else. So when people make the accusation that there's dark money, we got folk pushing in that are not in the interest of our community, where is that coming from? And why do you think people are putting that out on y'all?
Look, we live in a majority black city where most people are still economically disenfranchised and many people are living in poverty. When it looks like a bunch of money is flowing in trying to influence the system, it's normal to become fearful and concerned. But I think there are two really important things. One is that there is no separation between strong schools that are educating their children well and the benefit of the community broadly, including the benefit of businesses who are looking to hire people, who are looking to, make sure that they're in a place that's good for their business. And the
Yes.
second thing that's critical is that nobody's vote is bought. That's just not the reality.
So you're saying that story it's just not no substance to it, no truth?
No, I mean, relationships have been built over time, sure. Partnerships have been developed. I mean, shoot, Iris been doing this work for decades. If she doesn't know somebody, she's been doing it wrong, right? But, just like you mentioned that you were not supportive of Dr. Vitti in the beginning, we got those same letters from folks in the business community. We get pushback. And so you can see over the last 4 years that votes are not bought, and that support is coming from a place of respecting the work that we're doing and the direction we're taking the schools.
Well, your daddy, Tom Stallworth, you should have a whole lot of contacts. I mean, Tom's been around a long time. Your dad and your uncle and your grandmama, God rest her and bless her soul. I mean, so you should have some kind of hookup.
I mean, we've been around. We all been around, right? I mean, I like Sonia,
Right.
benefited from a very privileged education and came home to work. So I built my own relationships across the city as well.
You said privileged education. It's both, you said Sonia, Renaissance, but Iris and I had a privileged education too. We went to Central.
Well, I think my point is, and you asked me what schools I went to, and in my life, I really relate to the parents and families that hunt for the right school for their kids. So my mom took me to Renaissance to visit. She stood in classrooms and she made decisions trying to make sure that I was going in the direction she wanted, that I was going to University of Chicago, that I was doing my master's at Michigan. And so
Can I get in on this question just
Please.
quickly? So, what's really interesting to me about the dark money critique is what you're not hearing, right? And so what people aren't saying, they're not saying we're doing a bad job. They're not critiquing our ability to bring resource into the district. They're not critiquing our ability to hand out 53,000 free tablets and internet access with the support of the business community. They're not critiquing the raises that went to teachers. They're not critiquing the balanced budget. They're not critiquing the restoration of art, gym, music into every classroom in this district. And so to me, the silence on the fact that we actually have a record that is really, really, really tough to critique in terms of progress over the last 4 years, that to me is what has been so interesting in the last couple of weeks about this dark money critique, is what is not pointing out in terms of our leadership.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the tablets because, I had a little something to do with the tablets to the degree. Those are the 53,000 laptops, the tablets for K-12 students that the business community led by DTE and the foundations, the Skillman and Kellogg's, and I want to thank a whole bunch of people. GM was a part of that, Quicken Loans, and so many. I missed some names, but that's been a great venture. Let me just ask the impact that has made, particularly since our children are not back in school, and we have a question, when do you feel students should go back in completely to school buildings? I know that in Boston, they just shut the school system down. They said they're not going back in until next year, and it depends, I guess, from area to area. But, have the laptops, are they making a difference? And, just to be quite frank, our kids are now a year behind. I mean, that's about, we can call it what we want to. They are a year behind on top of where they already were. We are not going to be able to, you can't make up what you lost. You can just go forward from that. But they're a year behind. And if parents are not conscientious at home, making sure that Johnny and Susie and Akosua and Kwame and Juan and Abdullah get it, they're not going to get it. And so I know that has to bother you because it bothers me. I mean, what's your response to that?
I think we have an obligation to have equitable access, which is why there was a big push to have both face-to-face as well as distance learning. But it is incredibly concerning that we have students that were engaged in the previous year that we don't have now and don't know where they are.
How many students would you say?
Well, we started off at 8,000, and we're down somewhere between 2 or 3.
That you don't know where they are.
Exactly. And that concerns me. We had 80% of the students in DPSCD that were a part of the feeding program, breakfast and lunch. Now that we have 80% that's in distance learning, they're not taking advantage of the food. And so are they hungry, or they don't need the food? Are we not? We have it in every school, but do we need to start delivering? What are the other issues that are around them not having that breakfast and that lunch that they were getting every day? That concerns us. So because I am the glass is half full person, I don't want to say what keeps me up, what keeps me from sleeping, but I can tell you what wakes me up every morning. And when I wake up every morning, I'm concerned about where are the students that we don't know. I'm concerned about those that aren't eating. I'm concerned that those that are in distance learning, what percentage of them are not getting 100% of the instructional opportunity that they should be able to receive. And why we struggle with that and what our responses should be, I'm still concerned, and we don't have the answer.
Well, let me ask you, Sonia, when do you think, not asking for specific date, when do you think we're going to go back in, or are we looking at this same scenario this time next year?
My goodness, I hope not. If we go a whole year with the majority of our students not getting in-person instruction, I really think that would be catastrophic for this generation of young people in Detroit. And I don't think that's hyperbole. I think we know the research shows that if you don't have certain skills at X grade level, your entire life is impacted from an earning potential, from what kind of jobs you can have. And so the stakes are really, really, really high here. And we have an obligation to these students to figure this out in some way. And so it is my hope that we can continue to find a way to safely deliver in-person education, to protect our staff and our teachers and our students, but to get there so that we can honor what public education is supposed to be about for the most vulnerable young people in our community. This is supposed to be the equalizer. And if we miss a year, we're failing on that. And we have, all of us have to own that, like all of us. So I certainly hope that that's not where we land. We are preparing for that, eventuality. But again, hope for the best, plan for the worst.
If that occurs, Misha, and we pray that it doesn't, but if that occurs, is there a plan B, C, D, E for the children, for the students?
Yeah, I mean, as best we can, we are planning for various scenarios. And it really comes down to when we look at our buildings, we look at our dollars, we look at, the equipment we have.
Are
what
we
is
getting
required?
enough from Lansing?
No.
No.
No. I mean, because we already weren't getting enough from Lansing in terms of funding education properly, right? So even if emergency dollars come through or things that are specific to COVID, that doesn't, make the budget what it should be to properly educate our kids. That's just the reality of it. But, when we take a building like Central, for example, built for $4,000, little 350 in terms of current enrollment, and so if a percentage of those students want to be in person, we definitely have the space to educate them safely, to create a distanced environment and a protective environment. So those are the ways that we have to think about our scenarios and think about how we can use our buildings, what our staff are feeling, and how they're connected to the organization. But no, I mean, we have lost a year. That's definitely what keeps me up at night. And I mean, I think even, Sonia mentioned earning potential and the impact on your life, but also, quite frankly, not being connected to school leads to early death for a lot of our kids. So when we talk about this, when we talk about this virus, compare it with opportunities for education, we really are weighing mortality in two hands.
What is another question from the folk that are watching? What's your position on culturally responsive education?
I'm a full supporter of culturally responsive education. It's part of why I'm so excited about this anti-racist school district resolution, because this is our opportunity, not that we haven't had one before, but we can really move full force in evaluating things on so many different levels in terms of how we are best supporting our multicultural district and our predominantly black district at this point.
What does that mean when you say that resolution that you picked?
So,
Elaborate a little taste on that.
So a resolution typically is a declaration, like a statement of opinion. So when you're getting resolutions from other government bodies, a lot of times they're just statements. Our resolution, though, actually had some commitments in it that we plan to see through into policy decisions and into some things to change the district.
At one time, Detroit was the center of African-centered education. It was the model for the country. That's why we had Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, and that's why we had all these academies. I remember the Conference for the Black Child. I was a part of that. The NAPSE, National Association of Black School Educators, many of the educators in Detroit were part. Detroit was the center. Everybody looked at us for direction, and we've gotten away from that. Do you think that that has hurt us, helped us, or just kept things the same?
15 years of emergency management. That's what it was. 15 years of varying leaderships that had varying levels of commitment to sort
You're
of keep
talking
it.
about the folk that came in and ran the school district.
The
like
district.
The school district, like,
Yes.
I won't even call their names.
Yeah, a list of people who had various
Not
priorities
only
of what
in
they were.
Detroit, they did it all over
The
Michigan
country. Yes.
and the country.
Yes.
So they came in, and they really was about budget. It was more about,
They did do that right, though.
no, they didn't. They didn't. It was more about product than people. It was more about profit than student. It was about how can we squeeze the budget to comport with the monies that we had or we didn't have. And they paid very little attention to the academics of that. But African-centered, do you think that that had value, the African-centered educational piece?
I believe it had value. I believe it had value as we had it when we were at Central.
Yeah.
In that it helped to create your own personal identity. It helped you to create and form the values and the norms of how you wanted to live your life. It gave you a worldview that had more than one lane of perspective.
Compared to your last, this is a question from the community as well, compared to your last tenure, what can the community expect to see you if you get another term? What will you do different, and what will you do the same? What will you change? Don't be like the president who asked today when they asked him a question, if you could do it all over again, what would you do different? He said, nothing, I'd do everything the same, and 220,000 people are dead, 8 million are COVID infected. We got the worst economy that we've had. Our allies hate us, but he wouldn't do nothing different. So I'm not comparing y'all to him, but I'm just saying.
Thank goodness.
I'm not comparing you to him. But I mean, if you get another term, feel blessed, and the people in Detroit re-elect you, what will you do going forward?
You want to start?
I think this work this reform work is only just beginning. We've made a tremendous amount of progress in a short amount of time, but to Dr. Taylor's point, the district that was handed over to us from state oversight was badly broken. I mean, it was just like the first year was really just like, how do we figure out how to just do the basic things that you need to do to run an organization. And so we're past that. We've made all these investments in staff, teachers, schools, children. And I think for me, one of the biggest reasons that I'm running again is because we have a massive shortfall in the maintenance and quality of our school buildings. And in some of these situations, despite our best efforts, the conditions, they're just unacceptable. And we had started that work to find the resource to invest in our schools in a big public way. But the pandemic has interrupted so many things, including that work. And so I want another term just to see that through with my real estate background. And to continue the achievement has started to turn a corner before the pandemic as well. And so what we were doing was working. And we always thought that this was at least a 10-year commitment to reform to get the district that we want to see.
Is that like going back to your LEARN plan that you're dealing with in terms of building protocols and stuff such as that? I think, and one of the issues that we have in Detroit, because you may have an idea or policy that you want to put into the school system, but then we have unions. And whatever you do, the union's going to play a role in it. This is a union town. And we haven't talked about that, but how y'all get along with unions going forward? Is it easier? Is it better? Are you at each other's throats, or what's happening there?
No, we're not at each other's throats as a district or even
Are they in
as a
sync
board.
with the way the district is moving? The gradual reemergence of schools, students in the school district, back in the classrooms, or do they have something else that they have in mind?
They don't have everything that they would like to see, but it's a balance. With the finite resources that we had to balance of how to get from A to B to C to D.
Okay.
And we're moving, but it is a balancing act. When you ask me what would I do differently, now that I don't have to be concerned that the foundation under the system is going to crumble,
Right.
because we have built that, more attention can be paid to engagement. More attention can be paid to creating stronger partnerships with the community. More attention can be paid with how do we come to consensus around the priorities? Do you really understand what it is that we're trying to prioritize and the reasons behind the decision making? Some of the decision making simply had to be made because, to get to 1.1, less only to get to 2. And so now that, like I said, the foundation is built, processes of integrity are in place, we can look and say, okay, we got it done, and maybe that didn't always have as much as engagement or inclusion as people desired. So how do we go back and have a discussion about that so we can say where to go from here?
Okay. We have maybe about 5 or 6 minutes left. One of the things we did not talk about, but I think it's important, is mental health and the whole issue of how we deal with those students, the challenged in our school system. Meacher, do you have some thoughts around that? Are we learning anything? How do they fit into this? And are they being shortchanged? And will we be able to do something to mitigate any shortfalls within that community?
Again, it's hard not to do things pre-pandemic and like during pandemic, right? So pre-pandemic, we're working towards health centers. We're increasing our investment in social workers and counselors and making sure that there's more support for our students in mental health, right? Now that folks are at home, we have more than just the mental health of the child. We also have to consider the social, emotional, mental health of the whole household. What's going on with parents? How is that impacting? So I definitely think that we're in a place where we're going to take a step back and figure out how we can address that in a way that's meaningful. And the same for our staff. Your benefits might cover counseling, but what else do we need, right? Because if we don't have it in our mental health and our emotional health, it's very hard to continue to work through such a challenging time.
I remember when I was at Central, we had home and family living. We had shop. You had to take wood shop. You took shop, wood shop, you took electrical, you had plumbing, you had a skill. You could not graduate without something. And all of us were making the lamps. And I'm sure the people at home, brothers and sisters at home, remember those days. Some of them probably still got the lamp they made in high school at their mama's house or their grandmama's house, the little wooden diamond-shaped lamp with a little light in it. And you had to do that. We don't have that anymore. That's a deficit. I'm glad to hear you say putting art and music back into the classroom, because I remember sitting in our music class on Friday afternoons to it. We were ready to go home, ready to get out, get partying and all of that, but the music soothed us. It was a good balancing thing. And the first things that go, music, recess, gym, home and family living, they're gone. But we are suffering because of that. Mr. Loving taught us how to get along. He taught boys how to relate to girls and how you deal in a family life. That's why it was called home and family living. We don't have that, just some basic stuff. And you can see the difference. Do you think there's ever going to be a day when we get back to some of that basic kind of stuff?
So in the last few years, the district has made, again, in partnership with the business community, over a $10 million investment in our career technical centers. When I was in school, I knew them as VOTEC. We call them CTE now. And so that's a sort of an option, right? Like students have to opt into that, and they have to identify that as a path. You know, if were it me and had I the type of funding that you find in places like Birmingham and Royal Oak and Grosse Pointe, we would have all that, because at the end of the day, like our responsibility really distills down to, we have ownership and responsibility to produce the next generation of productive and committed citizens in Detroit. That is what this is really about. This is about preparing these children for their future as adults and their future as community members, and we should strive to provide as wide of a range of skills to make that happen and to create that opportunity for our students as possible. And that's why we also need to tackle, in a very real way, the way the state funds districts like ours.
Thank you, ladies. I know that we have been talking about voting and the essence of that. We had to take it so suppose. I'm glad that the NAACP, which I'm affiliated with, has developed a relationship with the Detroit Pistons. And I want to show a slide. Rip has done a nice piece. He's encouraging people to take your souls to the polls. And we have a nice slide. You may have seen this slide with him on the floor of the arena. If we could show that slide with him, just encouraging people to take your souls to the polls. That's Rip the Detroit Pistons in 2020, and vote in 2029. If Rip is saying, rip yourself and go on and take yourself to the poll, certainly you should be able to do that. When they leave the court, they're going to vote. The NBA is encouraging our children, our people, to go and to vote. And that's what's important. And you ladies certainly are encouraging people to do it. In the final 60 seconds that we have, I want you to describe yourself, why people should vote for you, in 3 words. Starting with your Sonia, 3 words. Just give me 3 words why people should vote for you.
I'm a passionate, committed problem solver.
Passionate, committed, problem solver. Okay, that's 3 words. You said I am, but that's fine. Okay. Iris? Results-oriented, committed, and dedicated. 4 words. Okay.
Oh, they better than me.
Nisha?
Progressive, dedicated, creative.
I like all that. Progressive, dedicated, and creative. I want to thank everybody for joining with us tonight on The Turning Point. I want to invite you to tune in on Sunday at 7 with the virtual online concert for Thaw, the Heat and Warmth program that, you know, the program that Santel Jenkins has been championing. This is to help people stay in their homes, to stay warm, and to pay your bills. We're doing this with DTE. The special guest entertainer will be none other than gospel recording artist Fred Hammond. 7 o'clock on Sunday. Tune in and watch Hallelujah for Heat We're going to have on our next show, The Turning Point, the ladies who are the women of color who are running for the university level education trustees and board. Miss Dr. Rima Vassa. We're going to have Shirley Stancato, Wayne State University, Eva DeWalsh, Wayne State University, and also Shanta Diggs for University of Michigan. Dr. Rima Vassa is running for MSU Board of Trustees. That's going to be on the 27th, right here at 6 o'clock. Continue to be with us, and by all means, continue to move towards the turning point in your life. See you the next time. Thank you for watching. Thank you.